Representative Carrick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On the topic of young people in Alaska.
Without objection, Representative Carrick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Last Friday in the House Labor and Commerce Committee, our committee was treated to a phenomenal presentation by Dr. Teresa, and I'm going to mispronounce her last name, Giarducci. Dr. Giarducci is from New York and has spent her entire career looking into the costs and benefits of defined benefit versus defined contribution retirement plans. And one of the things I hear really frequently in questioning or even in potential opposition is, do young people really care about retirement? And I asked Dr. Giarducci what her research and her expertise had shown related to this question. And she said that unlike previous generations, young people today do think about retirement when they are signing up to take a job and in the early years of that job. She said that in previous demographics and previous generations, people would begin to think about retirement and start looking at savings and investment plans in their mid-40s. But that millennials between the ages of 28 and 40 are thinking about it now. And this is across the country as well as in Alaska. I thought that was fascinating because that demographic correlates directly with the demographic of folks that's out-migrating from our state. And while it's not a direct one-to-one, people don't just out-migrate because of lack of a defined benefit retirement system, I think it's very well worth considering what factor this plays. And then, in addition, in that presentation, the members of the committee asked Dr. Giarducci, what are some of the broad benefits of a defined benefit plan? And it's always very hard on a really complicated issue like this to end up with just a couple of important talking points, but she was able to give those to us. There were 4 main advantages she talked about in her presentation. One was an immediate decrease by half in turnover of employees. She also discussed that a defined benefit plan is more efficient and yields a far greater rate of return on investments than defined contribution plans. And that totally makes sense to me because in order for a defined contribution plan to really work for the employee, you have to be a great investor. Most of us are not necessarily great investors. I think there's even a piece of legislation on financial education going through this building, and that conversation has been kept rolling because individuals do not gain those skills early on in life. The third benefit was the multiplier effect of having employees stay in their positions, working longer in those positions, and staying in their communities. This also makes sense to me because when young people become members of their community early, they eventually go on, even if they don't start out doing this, volunteering in that community, joining boards, getting involved in politics and the workings of that community and the people. And then the fourth major benefit that Dr. Giarducci listed was that employees gain additional crystallized knowledge as a result of lower turnover and longer time spent in the job. And again, this makes perfect sense to me, and I think we've heard really frequently in this body, especially going through the operating budget process, about some of the challenges in our state government with turnover. We've heard, for example, in the payroll division, that it takes approximately a year to train somebody to fully complete the daily tasks of that job. And if you have constant turnover, you continue to lose any crystallized knowledge that gets gained. I just want to read one highlight from the report that Dr. Giarducci mentioned, very briefly, Madam Speaker.
Without objection.
For Alaska, the most conservative estimated cost savings created by switching to a defined benefit plan is $76 million per year. This estimate is incomplete because it does not include direct employer contribution savings and indirect but real gains to attracting private investment and economic development stemming from better public services. Nor does it include the indirect but real gains to higher quality teaching, police and fire, and other public services. Madam Speaker, I just rise today to highlight some of the things we learned in that presentation. It was extremely valuable. And to state that I believe we should continue to take action and have hearings on legislation about defined benefits, including Senate Bill 88 this session. We need to keep this conversation moving, and as a member of the House State Affairs Committee, I truly look forward to hearing that legislation and other aspects of a defined benefit plan before we adjourn at the end of this session. Thank you, Madam Speaker.